the Cooligans, we're talking to Meg Linehan of The Athletic, talking NWSL, talking the final, which is coming up this Sunday.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be there.
And we're going to be there.
What up, North Carolina?
Let's go.
Take your shirt off. Twist it around your head. We're going to be there. That and more on this episode of the Cooligans!
We got a Petey Pablo reference early.
Next comes the baby, and then I guess J. Cole, and then I'm done.
That's all the
Grandmama. What else we got?
That's
LJ?
all the North Carolina things we know. No, this is exciting. We're excited to. It's been an exciting week, right? Because I'm using the word excited a lot.
Clearly, you're either excited or trying to figure out how to finish this lie to a police officer.
Hold on, let me get my thesaurus.
I'm glad you put me over, officer, because you must have seen the car that was chasing me, right? Who put this liquor in my mouth?
No, it's obviously with MLS, the playoff, the October.
What are you saying?
The Yankees losing, the MLS playoffs, the NWSL playoffs. Like, there's just a lot of
too much
excitement going around. And
the Jets getting scored on after and before the game. There's a lot happening.
There's so much happening, and I'm glad we have our next guest to
make sense of it all.
Exactly. To make sense of our lives,
really help us out.
Please introduce our guest, Alexis.
I mean, ladies and gentlemen, unless you're driving, put your hands together for the one, the only, works for The Athletic, knows everything about women's soccer, is going to school us right now. She talked to us last time, was from Paris.
That's right.
But now she's in the studio, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Meg Linehan.
Hello. I don't know if I can explain your lives to you.
Help us out.
I will do my best to at least guide you through.
Yeah, what's one change we can both make?
Through Sunday to the NWSL champion.
Okay, cool.
But I mean, look, this is why we love having you on, is because we didn't know this. The last time we had you on our show, you told us you're the only person that is full-time covering women's soccer in America.
From a mainstream sense, there are some, individual, like, smaller sites that have subscription models.
Yeah, but like you said, they're trash, right? You got to go to you. No, you didn't say she didn't say that.
But in terms of, like, an actual full-time, like, I have health insurance. That's a nice thing. I like having health insurance.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's one thing that we could introduce to our lives that would make it better.
Ooh, doctors.
So thank you for the inspiration.
But in theory, I am the only full-time person that's out here writing about NWSL and U.S. national team.
And that's something that just came with The Athletic, correct? That's not something that was happening before, and then you just simply switched to The Athletic.
So before this, I actually worked with NWSL directly in their media office, and then I basically got the chance to hop over to The Athletic and write about women's soccer full time, and also like sleep more, because before it was, I'd be in the office.
You were the media department.
So now I actually get to sleep. Like, I watch the games from home, and I have a beer while I'm watching, and then I go to bed. So, it's really a win-win for everyone.
Absolutely.
Mostly me.
Now, what's the one thing that you're most looking forward to so far? And we'll talk about what led up to it. We'll talk about some of the other teams. But NC Courage versus Chicago Red Stars.
Yep.
What's the one thing that our fans should be looking at? What are you excited about when it comes to this game?
I mean, so first, it's really nice because it's the first new matchup that we've had in the championship for a while. We've gotten Courage and Portland Thorns FC for a few years in a row. So the addition of the Chicago Red Stars, kind of a nice new welcome thing.
Yeah,
that
it's been Lakers, Celtics every year.
We get it.
And that's, it's not a bad thing, but now we get Sam Kerr in an NWSL championship. It's also Heather O'Reilly's final game as a professional soccer player for North Carolina. Like, I personally, she was my favorite player before I started actually covering women's soccer. So if you see me like quietly weeping in the press box, that's why.
Good. I thought it was because maybe I farted in the press box, but we know now it's Heather O'Reilly's fault. Heather O'Reilly's a bit of an arch nemesis.
Do you know our dealings with Heather O'Reilly? We'll just bring it up real quick so we can get out, because we won't be able to move the conversation forward.
Also, it might be emotional for me. So.
Yeah, and it's also, this should be a talking part in one of your next articles, because Heather O'Reilly, we were with her at the ICC event that House of Soccer
In Charlotte.
and she was there. She was the coach of the celebrity game, right? And we were sharing a trailer with Heather O'Reilly, and
An honor for anybody. We were so excited.
I was wildly flattered. It was incredible. I know she was like, "Who are these guys?"
Right. Could you get these two loud boys out of here? But then, so we got some like crudité plates and all that, right? And all of a sudden, we all start eating this thing. Nobody knows what it is. Turns out it's called pimento cheese dip.
Oh,
I had no idea what it was. Turns out it's like mayo and cheese mixed together with pepper. It's disgusting when you hear it, but as eating it, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then we leave to go do our jobs, and then we see Heather O'Reilly entering the trailer. Like, hey, Heather, how are you? Right? She goes in, and then when we come back, she's gone. She had done her job was done, and guess what was gone? The pimento cheese dip.
The entire it was the
whole thing.
It was like 3 pounds of pimento cheese dip.
This was cheese dip for an entire corporate event. And Heather O'Reilly took it with her. And I made the joke that she had it next to her in the car driving back to Cary, North Carolina. Turns out it was true.
Yeah. So we accused her of stealing it, and we were right.
And she said it was for my kids. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. You ate the whole pimento cheese dip on your own. So yeah, she's our arch nemesis now.
That's valid.
Yeah.
I wanna validate your feelings.
Thank you. Yeah. So at least now you know that your hero might have been a villain this entire time.
A little bit of a pimento cheese dip theft. We solved the caper. Ooh, I bet you there's capers in it.
So I want to ask about, especially since you have worked with the league directly on, I don't know, maybe an emotional level, seeing the league grow. It hasn't. This is what it's seventh year. Yep. How does it feel now? There's an introduction of a new team, which we'll talk about in a moment. But how do you feel? How has your connection with the league grown since you basically been there from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being on the conference call for the actual announcement of this league, right? And I think that from end of 2012 into 2013 for the first season of the league, I mean, it's a completely different animal at this point. Like, we have some successful teams. It's not been without its challenges throughout the time. Like, we've lost a couple teams along the way, but in terms of the crowds that we've been seeing this season, getting actual television deals, the quality of play, people like Sam Kerr, Alex Morgan, Christine Sinclair, Marta's in the league, like, the talent is there. Are there things that can still be worked on? Absolutely. The work is pretty much never done. That's why a lot of us don't sleep in this world. But I do think that the league is in a really strong position. And as you were saying, like, expansion is happening. They've signed some new partnerships. Budweiser coming in as a sponsor was a huge thing this year. That's really clutch for them. So I think that the momentum is going in the right direction. And sometimes it takes strange ways for us to kind of push NWSL forward. But it has been, overall, I think the growth is definitely in a place that I don't think I even expected.
Yeah, the one thing you tweeted out earlier, I believe it was today, about hoping that the teams take advantage of like customizing kits and doing things that are a little bit more unique. Yeah. Alexis is a very big fan of just fashion everything. It's just like so annoying.
I know you see me and you're like clearly a fashion icon.
There's a lot of opinions on this stuff.
Well, when it comes to kits, I think it's something that's specific to soccer that really does draw a massive fan base to it. It bonds you with the fans. And honestly, why is it so hard for me to find NWSL kits cut in my shape? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's always been a struggle on the women's side too. It's not even just NWSL. Like, the fact that we still can't get like a 4-star U.S. national team jersey after they won the World Cup.
Right.
Impossible, right? And part of that is because we don't have the infrastructure, because people still don't believe that there's actually a market for it. So there's systemic stuff behind it. But
actually, I was listening to a couple lobbyists, and they told me.
But also, like, I mean, so the thing that I was talking about today, Ford Madison's kits, Minneapolis City, their stuff is really cool. Chicago Red Stars, I think, actually has the best kit in the league. Like, I almost wore it today, and then I was like, I don't want to look partisan before this championship game. But they have like a great custom kit, the amount of design work that went into it. I mean, if you can get someone from a city that isn't Chicago to wear that, like, that I think is the success of actually moving the culture in a place that is going to help grow the game. And that's where NWSL has so much potential ahead of it. But there is a culture around it. And that's where I think people actually just need to find out about it in the meantime. But having cool kits is such an easy win.
It's huge. We got some more questions about that right when we get back.
right, let's do it. So I want to talk about the games that happened this Sunday, right? That was Sunday.
Sunday, yep.
The two matches, the playoffs, right? So the top four, if people do not know, the top four in the NWSL standings play in a one-game playoff to determine who will play in the final. And that was between the Chicago Red Stars and the Portland Thorns, and the North Carolina Courage and the Seattle Reign. So I want to talk about what game should we start with first? Let's start with this, the Reign game.
Sure.
Which is a strange way to
Reign
phrase
game?
it. The Tacoma Reign, which is like, that's a strange thing. Why does it say Seattle when they play in Tacoma?
I mean,
yeah, it's interesting just because, so I think it gets tied to, so Sky Blue FC, right? You guys know Sky Blue FC. They don't have a place tied to the name, and so they're questing for a way. All of those acronyms have to be tied to a location.
Correct.
So it is strange that it still says Seattle when they do not play in Seattle.
Right.
But I think it's just
great.
like a
TAC right there.
Yeah.
In the
Tacoma Reign also sounds like a good truck. Right? It's a hell of a pickup. Bet on that thing.
No, the Courage win this game 4-1, and for the most part, this game you didn't know where any goal was going to come from.
Right.
The penalty that Heather O'Reilly does put away, and then the game. This is when the game started taking off, right?
Yeah.
After Ifeoma Anumanu, right?
Yep.
She scores and ties the game. This is my first sort of take whenever I see the Courage and the games I've seen. They are, to me, one of the best teams in the world, right? They just seem like, I would love to see the Courage play against the U.S. women's national team if they were duplicates of some of the players.
I don't know who
do that
would
on
win
FIFA.
that. I do not know who would win that game.
But that's like one of those things you do like in a FIFA game. You're like, oh, you know what I mean?
So this is where we start the petition for FIFA to actually add NWSL
100%,
to the game.
yeah.
This
Right?
would be
Put them in the rest of the world if you have to.
I know.
Okay?
Yeah.
But so that's usually how I feel watching the Courage, where they seem like the most tactically sound team. The most the chemistry is clearly there. As far as teams that make mistakes, they seem to make the fewest. They play with the most confidence. So I was surprised that the Reign kind of held on as long as they did, but it took their keeper being miraculous to do it.
Yeah, no, Casey Murphy had like a crazy game in goal for Reign FC, and I think that, Vlatko Andonovski, who's their head coach, and in theory probably our next U.S. national team coach, got all of the decisions right trying to face down the Courage. Like, you have to basically know, okay, they're going to take a million shots against you. Like, that is just their game. They're terrifying, really. Like, they're probably the best women's professional team that has ever existed in this country, like, by like a million miles. So I think he got all of the decisions right, but then at some point, like, the Courage are just going to outlast you. The fitness is there, the decisions are there. They have so many weapons. The fact that you can pull an MVP finalist from 2018 off the bench in McCall Zerboni, and then a 2019 MVP finalist off the bench in Kristen Hamilton.
Not
like,
bad, huh?
yeah, it's just like, I mean, the depth of that team is crazy. Their belief in each other is crazy. And, Heyo spoke about it after the game of just, this isn't our season. Like, they just have this thing in their head that just keeps telling them, we're going to win this.
Yeah, well,
they seem to me like to be built specifically to win this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's give Heather O'Reilly the fan farewell. Let's give her a parade. Let's give her a championship. Let's give her something, because it seems like at every angle they're fully prepared for whatever you bring to them.
Right.
And I always used to yell this all the time. I used to say, like, test the keeper. Why aren't we testing the keeper? It seems like that must be written on the wall for North Carolina
Hockey,
Courage.
though, it's like crash. They just crashed the net for basically 90 minutes, and the fact that Reign withstood that for as long as they did, A, is a miracle.
Yeah.
But B, I think just proves that in the long run, the Courage are probably going to win simply because they just keep coming, and then extra time hits, and it's just like, okay, bye.
Yeah, and
see you later.
When they did tie the game up, and I looked at Heather O'Reilly and saw how I felt like she was more confident.
Yes.
After they gave up a goal.
It's like, you punch a villain in a movie, and they look at it and they're like, oh, now we
for her, it's
now we
pimento
dance.
cheese.
Yeah. She wipes it. She's like, one of them was fat. They didn't need it.
There was that that absolute certainty that her career was not ending there, and I was sort of feeling the same way. We're like, oh, we've seen the Thorns and the Courage all the time. It'd be nice if somebody else won. So I was like rooting for the underdog. But Heather O'Reilly was like, I don't care about no damn underdog.
Underdog.
That's the whole thing. Like, that's the Courage mentality, is they think they're the underdogs no matter what situation that they're in, which is why, like, I do lovingly refer to them as a cult. They have bought into that system that just, they went to North Carolina as a team. Before that, they were in Western New York. And the core of that team formed a young group that all got drafted at the same time, like the Sam Mewis, Lynn Williams, that group. And that Western New York team really was an underdog when they won the first NWSL championship as the core of that team before moving to North Carolina. And that is still the core identity of that team, no matter how many games they win, no matter how many trophies they lift. It does not matter to them. They are still like scrappy little jerks from Western New York trying to prove a point to the rest of the league.
Yeah, but the Courage feel a little bit like when you look at the roster, you're like, this ain't fair, right? It's a little bit like Manchester City. Why is the budget out for the Courage? Do they have like oil money?
How much TAM they get out there in North Carolina?
It seems a little bit unfair, but I don't exactly know the salary cap rules or what, because they seem like they have a lot of very, very good players.
I mean, I think that Portland is even just as stacked as North Carolina is. Both of these teams have been constructed well. Part of what the North Carolina Courage benefit from is that they drafted so many of these now national team players before they ever made the team. Sam Mewis, back when she got drafted, was maybe long-term in the national team picture, but is not nearly the player that she is today. So they, I think, have benefited from the fact that they've just made smart decisions early on that are now paying off. But like Kristen Hamilton, right, MVP finalist, was the final pick of that draft class. I mean, like number 36. And now in 2019, she's an MVP finalist. Like, they have just found talent in ways that I think other teams have not succeeded at.
I just want to highlight also Shea Groom, who we saw.
Yes.
She
broke a rib.
She broke a rib.
Yeah.
Carly Lloyd broke her rib when they collided.
That brick wall with Carly Lloyd.
Shea Groom, who plays for Reign FC, broke a rib, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
3 months ago?
Yeah, subbed on.
And subbed on and played in this game where I was just like...
How much you got so much more disability. Why are you going back to work?
That was just incredible to see. And again, it's that because we were in Red Bull Arena on the pitch.
That was August.
She actually they
carted her off.
And I heard her say to, I think, a family member, someone who was with her, like, I'm in so much pain, this hurts so bad, something like that. And it just humanized, the whole soccer injury. It just made it real. And to see her go back on, I'm like, if I was in that much paper cut, I'd still be out. You know what I mean? I'd be like, no, go get another co-host, Christian. It still kind of hurts sometimes to open letters,
It's clearly 6 to 8 weeks.
I mean, what am I supposed to do here? Doctor says it's an Achilles in my hand. No.
All right, we'll be back with Meg with more after this.
Yeah, baby, even more with Meg Linehan. Now, we talked about what got North Carolina Courage into the final. Let's talk a little bit about Chicago Red Stars versus Portland Thorns.
Yes.
Now, this obviously a great game. Most people would have expected Thorns to go through, right?
I think historically,
yeah.
The Red Stars hadn't beaten the Thorns since 2013. So.
Okay.
Little Canada versus U.S. action there, huh?
But this, I love in this game. Again, it's one of those like you rooting for the underdog a little bit. Sorry to my Thorns friends, we love you.
Yeah, love you, Kayla.
Love you guys. But Sam Kerr, how could you not be a fan of Sam Kerr?
Right.
She is incredibly dominant. Golden Boot winner, right?
Golden Boot winner.
And her goal is enough to get them through. I'm happy that they won. Happy for them. I'm terrified for them now that they have to go against the Courage. What are they going to do?
They need to play with Courage to go up against the Courage. But Sam Kerr also, when we went to the game at Rebel Arena, which was Reign versus Sky Blue, Sam Kerr played for Sky Blue, and there was someone who I saw with a Sam Kerr jersey, a gentleman with a Sam Kerr jersey, tucked all the way into his pants.
Ooh.
Right, he was wearing jeans, brown belt, black shoes, and I look. not to make this about fashion, but I was like, either this dude is an accountant, Sam Kerr's dad, or a cop, a bad undercover cop. You don't see that very often. But I think that's also a compliment to NWSL when now we got Herbs going to the game. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is a good thing. Like, yo, we're developing, right? Yeah. You got to bring in
every market.
everybody.
Is being spoken to
all
now.
demographics.
I know.
Yeah.
Sam Kerr transcends.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
She's just that incredible.
So what are the Red
Oh, yeah,
Stars
question.
going?
Yeah.
How are they going to? How do they have a shot against the Courage?
So Sam Kerr, first of all, has scored every single game that the Courage and the Red Stars have played this year.
Okay.
So that's good thing number one. Good thing number two is that Chicago actually beat them twice this year. So
right.
now, granted, it's the championship. It's in Cary, North Carolina. It's in their home stadium. So I think it is still a little bit of an uphill climb. But I do think that we saw something kind of promising for the last 15 minutes of that Red Stars Thorns game where Rory Dames, the head coach, his only sub of that entire game was to bring on Katie Naughton, basically to pull a Jill Ellis and throw a third center back into the game. Mm-hmm. So they might be able to contain all like 15,000 of the Courage attackers, right?
How tentative you are when you say
I know.
contain. You were like, all right.
It is an uphill climb, but I do think that if there is any team that we have seen now through the full season and now through the semifinals, Chicago's probably the only team that actually has a meaningful shot at beating the Courage.
Okay, that's saying a lot. So the one thing I was sort of the goal that Sam Kerr did score. The interesting part was she is like a proven goal scorer. I was more concerned about in that game against Adriana French. I thought. It was like one mistake that she made,
right.
But I think she really did make a poor judgment as far as when that ball was going forward and Sam Kerr was running to it. I really felt like Adriana French was backing away from she was like on her heels.
Yeah.
Like she barely got a chance to go for the ball.
You also, I mean, where do you look? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you have all of a sudden you're like, why are so many people wearing the same jersey? I thought we only had 11 out here. Like, you know what I mean? It's like it's overwhelming. So I mean, you can't really. There's nowhere really to turn.
I think that she tends to play closer to her. Like, I mean, you look at Casey Murphy in that first semifinal, and I think she was very aggressive in terms of how she came out against the Courage. I think French likes to play slightly closer to her line, but also I think once Sam Kerr is kind of on someone's back shoulder, I don't know how much left there is to actually do. And they had just gotten a chance like 2 minutes before that goal that was essentially like the exact same play where Kerr got a ball over the top and had gotten a shot off and it went wide. And like they basically just reran it and it worked. So Yuki Nagasato, I think her partnership with Kerr is really clutch, but I don't know if I would super blame French in that moment just because I think when you do get a one-on-one against Sam Kerr, I'm going to take Sam Kerr in about 99% of those situations.
I'm blaming Adriana French. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I thought
I guess, you know, for the fans watching this, because especially Chicago, Red Stars, Portland Thorns, you're just trying to see, all right, who's going to be able to take on the Courage? And then it just sounds like nobody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think it's going to take for Chicago to be able to sort of level the playing field as much as they can? Do you think it's something where you park the bus? Do you think it's something where, all right, if you're going to send somebody forward, maybe we hit them on a counter? Like,
Right.
what is the potential? What is something that the fans should be looking out for to say, like, here's the tactics that Chicago's going to try to pull out?
I mean, I think it's really interesting if a team actually doesn't try to go for parking the bus, low block strategy. Like, I think that's where the rain went essentially on Sunday, and it works for a certain amount. But then also, if you're going to beat the Courage, you have to score goals, right? Yeah. Like you fundamentally do. And if you have an attacker like Sam Kerr, like just go at him. Like I honestly think if the game turns wide open, I think Chicago actually probably has a better chance because Chicago does have the ability to score, especially if they can get someone else involved beyond just Kerr. Like if Yuki Nagasato, like she has 8 goals, 8 assists on the season. If she can get a goal in that game, or I mean even Casey Short has scored a couple very clutch goals this year. If you can get someone else that's involved in a way where it's not just Sam Kerr trying to make magic happen on her own, then I think that Chicago, A, has a shot, but B, like, I think you just kind of have to go right back at North Carolina because in the long run, if you sit back and you let them just take shot after shot, I mean, we've seen it. They're just eventually going to run you down.
Yeah.
So pull the keeper is what you're saying.
Send Alyssa Nair up.
Right away.
Send her up. Just that's all I want in this life. Is I was so hopeful in the U.S. national team game, Jill Ellis's final game in Chicago, when they sent her up. I was like, Alyssa Nair goal right now. So if she does it in NWSL, I'll be perfectly happy. That's even better, actually. Yeah. That's even better.
Yeah, it has been. I haven't watched too many Red Stars games, but when you see the like the star power of the teams that, especially that make it to the top 4, you sort of understand like that they do have several options of where they can get some goals from. And Sam Kerr, I mean, we saw it at the World Cup where we're like, who else on Australia's team is gonna score?
No, she carried it on her own.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I guess it feels like it's a little similar with the Red Stars, but the Red Stars they didn't get to second place accidentally. You know what I mean?
No,
So.
and I think that they've peaked at a really good time. Like they've now won 6 games in a row, and I think the Courage have. They played Portland in Portland and won 6-0, and I think since that game they have also been on like this crazy form. But I do think that it's the 2 best teams in the league. Like these are the 2 teams that deserve to be in this game, and I think that it is definitely the Courage. Like it's on them to win at home, right? And I think that would cement their place as one of the greatest all-time teams. But I do think that Chicago is capable of coming up with a surprise. But I think part of it too is that you start playing without the pressure, right? That's what the Reign came in. Like everything that they kept saying into this game is like, we don't have the pressure of this game. We're not playing at home. And I think that worked for them through the first 90 minutes. So if you can, probably like not have North Carolina score 3 goals on you in the span of like 15 minutes, that's a good thing. But, I think that if Chicago actually goes at the Courage, like it would be an extremely entertaining game for everyone. But B, they might actually just manage to outscore them.
Wow. All right, we got more when we come back after this.
Okay, so the NWSL final, the championship final, is going to be happening this Sunday,
October 27th.
October 27th. We will be there. The Courage against the Red Stars in Cary, North Carolina. I'm excited about this because we are going to our first NWSL final.
This is it.
Yeah.
NWSL. I'm going to tuck my jersey in.
So you got to dress appropriately.
You know what I mean? Don't disrespect Samantha Kerr like that. You come out here not looking like an accountant.
So what can we expect? Not specifically from the game, but from what happens around. How is the NWSL championship covered? What is there?
When does Lady Gaga come on?
What's the halftime show like? What? Please give us a little preview.
Yeah, I think you might be a little underwhelmed. I'm not gonna lie. Also, I think it is gonna rain probably most of the weekend in beautiful Cary, North Carolina, but. There are some things, mostly for media around it. Like we always have a media day where both teams come in. I will tell you, last year's probably won't get repeated. It was actually at Nike, and it turned into a basketball pickup game with Portland Thorns. So that was probably like our best one ever, right? I don't know if we're going to hit that height again.
Are we going to the wrong NWSL?
I know.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring out one of those slap hockey things, and we can all play that. Remember that thing? Remember the little box?
Hockey?
Knock hockey. That's what it was. You get the riff.
Yeah. So there's
He's
media
like,
day.
Can I talk? Are you done with your stupid toy reference?
Just roll in with a foosball too. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Media day, there's going to be a press conference on Saturday and then the game on Sunday. There's not like a huge amount. Usually what ends up happening is that the NWSL supporters, especially when Portland is involved, there tends to be night before karaoke, which gets interesting, I will say, as someone who's been to both the night before and then the night after. They tend to get interesting, but I think that's kind of one of the areas of growth for NWSL is like, there's no all-star game.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like karaoke choices.
Yeah, no, I mean,
bigger book.
Yeah.
A little bit more hip hop this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So having more events around the championship and, like part of the struggle I think with this league too is that it's not just for kids and little girls. Like that's kind of the narrative that we are slowly actually escaping. So like Budweiser coming in, like there are adults who, yeah, like I think it's okay to be like, hey, we're gonna go drink before this game and actually, have it be like a cool thing to go to and travel to as an adult. So, maybe with expansion, if we ever get a championship in Louisville, which is, coming into the league in 2021, we'll just have like a whole bourbon night. And
let's do it.
Yeah.
Right. What happened to Alexis? We lost him in Louisville.
We lost him at the NWSL final.
He's coming home in a few weeks. Well, he's got to clean up a little bit from that bourbon.
So speaking of that, the expansion, we did see that earlier today when we're taping this. So Louisville will be the team coming in 2021 in a new stadium. What does that mean for just your take on just the growth of the league and in that particular city? And then for 2020, I know you had mentioned that there might be another team.
Right. Yeah. I think we're still trying to wait and see. So the Louisville deal was done, right? Like it's signed. League didn't want to wait to announce it. I'm sure Louisville didn't want to wait to announce it. So we got that on Tuesday. In terms of 2020, Sacramento is a big possibility. That's kind of the big name that's still floating around. Obviously, they're currently slightly busy announcing the fact that they're going to be joining MLS.
Right.
Sure.
But in theory, that could be the 2020 team, which would be a huge step forward for NWSL. There's no team in California, and California is kind of an important state in this country.
A lot of people live there.
Yeah. Like, they spend money on soccer, that kind of thing. So NWSL has been looking for a really long time. What's the right market in California? Sacramento might be the one that gets across the line first. Louisville coming in 2021. I think it's an interesting market. Like I've seen a lot of people saying like, is it the right pick just because it's not necessarily, a New York City or LA or Atlanta, right? But the nice thing about Louisville is that that's going to be the only actual like top tier professional team in the city. Right? So they have a USL team, so there will be like support from a soccer side, but NWSL team is actually going to be the game in town in addition to college and the USL stuff. So I think that, we see how successful a market like Portland can be, where there's not a huge amount of competition. And I think that might be a perfect test case in Louisville to be like, what happens when NWSL is the pro team in town?
Yeah.
Is there any... or I guess maybe research or do people look into like what college programs are successful and specifically for women's soccer? Do they kind of look in that direction and then kind of see if a pro team can work in that area? Does college factor into it?
I think it does, especially college soccer is really important on the women's side of the game. It's not so much on the men's side of the game. So, I mean, you look at someplace like North Carolina, right? They're right next door to UNC, which historically has had some success on the women's side of the program, just a little bit.
Say it mildly.
So I think that college is definitely considered, and I think, Louisville does have a pretty successful women's team. There are, college sports there that draw people, but I think first and foremost, what the league is looking for from expansion markets is an ownership group that gets it and is willing to say, okay, not only do we get it at this moment, but we know what it can be. And having someone that's willing to invest in a long-term play for the growth of women's soccer. Because right now, I think you're coming into the league and you're not exactly like saying like, oh yeah, we're going to like pocket millions of dollars year one, right? So you've got to find someone who's willing to invest and willing to say, okay, this is something that we're in for in the long term, because that's always been kind of the historical problem with women's soccer. I had someone today saying like, well, LA Galaxy have done this before. They own the Soul, like the same ownership group owned the Soul. They lasted like a year and they were out. So you can't expect success day one. It's year 7 of the league. We're looking at year 8, year 9. It's not going to be even MLS from day one.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I think the actual goal is to have an ownership group that knows, okay, this is going to be a 5-year, 10-year plan for us.
I'm curious. I'm curious about, speaking of like the maybe grading ownership groups or grading certain teams. What is going on with the Orlando Pride? Because the from a marketing perspective, the players, everything's just absolutely on point. But they not only,
it's a reality show when you look closer.
Not only do they not just have very poor games, the players do not look happy. That's like the one thing I noticed. So what do you think is like the next season? What can they fix?
Yeah, I mean, there's such an interesting story because, like, even I look at them and, you know, I've seen them live in person a couple of times this season, and it's not like there's one thing where you say, like, oh, if you tweak that, it's probably going to be okay. Like, I mean, we've seen a huge turnaround from Sky Blue FC, both on and off the field this season, right? It's not... The nice thing about NWSL is you can literally go from the worst team in the league to one of the best within the span of a season if you change a few things. I don't know what the Orlando Pride need to change. Like, is it because we thought before last season when Mark Skinner came in as head coach that it was a coaching problem? It wasn't a coaching problem. They're still not getting results. So the question is it, you know, is it a roster thing? Is it a chemistry? Like, again, all of us who are, you know, not necessarily in that market, they look fine sometimes too when they come off the field. Like Allie Krieger's sitting there in a hallway willing to talk to me for 10 minutes about the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like they're just like beaten down or anything, but you get them on the field sometimes and they can't close out games. They can't find wins in a way that you would expect out of a team. It is confounding in a way that, like, I think other teams we have been able to look at in this league and said, okay, you've got XYZ for problems. If you resolve these in the off season, Orlando, I think just like, I don't know if they just need to basically blow it up and start all over again, but it's not even just on the women's side too. Like, obviously they have a problem on the men's side, and I don't know if that's coming from the same source or if it just happens to be, you know, both teams are going through just some existential questions at the same time.
Well, we got more when we get back. Yeah, we got even more with Meg Linehan. So far, you've given us a lot of information about what's going to happen, what's happening inside women's soccer. One question I have is, how far do you think we are from the time when, and it's two questions. One, teams like LAFC and other teams that now have their own soccer-specific stadium start to bring on a women's team, whether it's associated with that ownership or not, or just someone that rents out the stadium. And how far are we away from women's academies?
Yeah, I mean, women's academies actually do exist within, like, the DA, but I think that I've actually seen a lot of complaints, even from NWSL coaches, that the development system in the country is kind of broken right at the moment, just because I think that it's slightly different from the men's side. So the way that the academy system has been set up kind of felt shoehorned into the women's system as it previously existed. So I think that, you know, we're starting to see a couple younger players come up and train with NWSL teams. I definitely think that it's something that we could probably work on quite a bit, but I don't know if we're necessarily at that same level of, like, really needing an academy system at this point within the U.S. In terms of LAFC, Atlanta, like, those teams are definitely interested, right? They've been talking to the league for a while. It's just a matter of, are they going to take the leap? Are they actually invested in putting that amount of money into a women's side or having someone come into the stadium in a meaningful way? And I think that one of the things that I feel better about is the fact that it hasn't happened yet, because it means that when it does happen, they're actually going to be 100% all in, rather than just saying, oh, we should have a women's team.
Right.
Because I think that's where we start to see the tension of what comes first as a priority, right? Because if LAFC is coming in and it's more like an obligation thing, or it's brand driven rather than being invested in growing the NWSL, that's where I think a lot of us who have been around for a while start to get nervous and say, okay, hey, we've seen this song before.
Yeah.
Like, let's slow our roll just for like another year.
Here's why I'm not as worried, is because Mia Hamm is there.
Yes.
So I figure, like, she won't allow that. She's one of the 4,500 owners of LAFC. I feel like she won't allow that to happen. At least, you know, you would assume so.
Yeah, I think you always need someone on the inside who's going to advocate in a meaningful fashion, right? And I think the question is, does she have enough power within the LAFC organization to actually make it happen in a way that is productive for them?
Right.
And I think that that's part of why we haven't seen it yet, is because they have other priorities, like currently probably trying to win MLS Cup, right? But in the long run, do I think LAFC is probably going to join this league? Yes, right? Like, LA makes sense, but this is, again, like where we've seen the struggle of major cities not necessarily responding to women's soccer, right? Like, Louisville is interesting because it gives you a chance to look and see, okay, does women's soccer do well when it doesn't have a lot of competition? Whereas you step into a market like LA, this is what we're seeing with Chicago Red Stars, is how hard it is to get meaningful coverage of the team when you're not the only game in town. In LA, like, you're not at all. So
are the Red Stars staying in Bridgeview, or are they also going to be?
They're staying in Bridgeview. Yeah. Which is a whole, like, that turned into a whole fight because some local outlet was like, hey, you don't have to go to Bridgeview anymore for soccer, and everyone was like,
yeah, they're still
here.
Except
yes, you do. You have to go.
You wouldn't let me finish.
So so speaking of that, the stadium issue, because we saw when we went to Rebel Arena, tons of Sky Blue fans. It was great to see. Clearly, it was more accessible for a lot of people. We see the Washington Spirit play their games at Audi Field, and people are showing up, right? So what is been like? How much for 2020 is the NWSL going to pursue trying to get their games in MLS stadiums?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge step forward. Is actually putting it. I mean, half of the battle is being able to get like young people on public transportation to a soccer game. And so many of the NWSL stadiums are in spots that are not accessible via public transportation or near a city center, right? That's, again, Portland. You look at it where that is, you can walk to the stadium from pretty much any point downtown. Yeah. Like, that location is, I think, the model of what works. And that's, I mean, it's not just an NWSL issue, either. Like, that's MLS, too. Like, that's why Chicago Fire moved back to Soldier Field, so that way they were in walking distance of the city center.
Right.
So that, I think, where we're starting to see MLS stadiums being accessible, if NWSL can take advantage of that, that's a huge leap forward for them rather than playing, like, out in the suburbs, because that's always been one of the things that I think is holding back, like, the full audience potential of this league is you get, you know, the kids playing soccer or who are in the kids leagues being marketed to more than people who are interested in drinking outside of the game, but you know, like
soccer deserves a culture around it. It's not just the 90 minutes, and that's why that's why you're seeing. I think it would work really well. And again, this is from an outsider's perspective. I think it would work really well. LAFC and Atlanta United, just to be use those as examples. It just kind of makes sense, and it makes sense for me to see Sky Blue playing at Rebel Arena. It just makes sense. It's a place. I get it's not the easiest to get to it. Rebel Arena. It's 2 swipes on a Metro card. What are we doing? But you know, come on, Path. Get your act together. But it is easier to get to than, you know, to go to $26 on a train.
I literally did not go to Sky Blue FC games unless I could rent a zip car. Like that was my thing of.
Well, pick us up next time and we'll go. Meg, what are you doing? Driving by yourself? You can have Cooligans in the car.
Carpool.
We could take the HOV lane, the Hove lane.
We got a system. Meg, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight, your humor, and thank you so much for joining us. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And good luck writing all those articles. We're going to be excited. We're going to party a little bit.
So again, we will be hanging out at the NWSL Championship this Sunday. So watch the game if you are not going.
It's on ESPN.
It's on ESPN.
It's the most accessible game.
So do the right thing and support the league. And this is the biggest game. So this is your at least an opportunity to watch if you have not watched this season. So Meg Linehan, thank you so much for joining us. So we'll be back with more after this. Thank you, Meg Linehan, for joining us. That was awesome.
She is so good.
Again, the final is this Sunday. Watch it on ESPN. If you're going to be there, say hello to us. Say hello to us at the in Cary. So
and also somebody else hire a full-time women's soccer writer so she ain't got to write all this on her own. It's
a heavy burden on Meg. But thank you again, Meg Linehan of The Athletic, for joining us. Let's talk about a couple other things before we wrap up today.
We talked a little bit about expansion with Meg, but you know, expansion also happening in
Major League
MLS,
Soccer. Okay, I think it's the 86th team.
Yeah, not bad.
Pretty good.
Next season,
still no promotion relegation. We're not gonna do it.
No one's gonna go down. We're all on the same.
Okay, we're all 86 teams, and we're all number 1.
Also, there's no more regular season. It's all playoffs. So
no, Sacramento Republic officially joining Major League Soccer.
It's a big deal for them, and they've been trying for forever. They had to switch like ownership twice.
Yeah, because they're like, you ain't got enough money.
Damn, what you got in your pocket? MLS was like, how much is it to get in? What you got?
That ain't enough.
Yeah. Did you see the video they put out?
Yes, this is the weirdest thing about this announcement was who was in the promo video,
right?
Because it was Tom Brady, which is cool. I don't know what's his relation to Sacramento. I don't know if he's from there.
David Spade was in.
David Spade. This is the weird one. David Spade, comedian. We love when comedians are involved in soccer.
What a wonderful thing! Like, oh look, comedians in soccer. But the first thing he says is, I don't know anything about soccer. Why are you in the video?
Get anyone else.
Anybody else? But there are no comedians that know about soccer. Wait a minute.
I don't know. You know what? We've heard of soccer.
Yeah.
We know a little bit about it.
A little bit.
I'm sure also, you could have told them, like, hey, can you send us a different take of that one?
Yeah.
Because in the beginning of it, you say you don't know about the sport that we play.
Just a little bit. I feel like that for some reason, excuse whatever you're going to say after that. If you start with, look, I don't know anything about this.
But cool.
But I got paid.
Cool to see Sacramento finally getting in the league. They will be the 29th team. I don't know what year they're going to be starting. 2022.
2022.
So by 2020, we currently have 24 teams.
Yeah.
And in 2 years.
In 2 years, we're going to have 1,700. It's going to be a lot. Yeah.
So it seems like.
Up the Biloxi. Des Moines United.
You know what's funny is that every time you make this joke from time to time about like very obscure cities having soccer teams, and people get mad at you because
from those cities.
Because they're like, hey, we play soccer here.
Yeah, we would love a team.
Because they're like, look at these damn Yanks talking about these big city folk talking about their big old soccer teams.
I'll go to Sporting Grand Rapids and apologize.
So, you don't want to disenfranchise anybody.
No, apparently I do. I just keep doing it. You know what I mean? What's the point?
But no, happy for Sacramento. A new city for us to go visit on top of what? Miami, Louisville.
Hell yeah.
So Sacramento, what are the other? It's a couple. I can't remember all of them. There's too many at this point. But now it's feeling more and more like the plan is to have that promotion relegation between MLS 1 and MLS 2. I don't know.
I think they're excited about 32 or 34 teams. I think that's what they're going to go to.
Okay. So who knows?
I mean, how many more TV markets are there at this? Or is that even important anymore? It's all on the internet.
Exactly.
Come on, TikTok United.
They got to go to the cities that have the most iPhones.
Yeah. You're just like, what kind of bandwidth you got here? That's how we pick a team.
That's how we sell soccer.
You got gigabit? Yo, you getting 18, bro.
So the one thing I wanted to talk about real quick was
speaking of Northern California.
Yes, Napa Valley 1839 did something really, really cool recently. They just had a match against the New York Cosmos.
Yeah.
We had when we Ansi, we were talking about it.
Ansi Agoli was here.
But the Napa Valley did a really cool thing. They have these new kits that you can purchase that are about ending gun violence.
The front of the shirt says enough.
Yes, and it has, and on the kit itself has the names of different cities that have had mass shootings ever since the one that happened. So basically, the reason it's related, we talked about this on our podcast, because the owner of the team, his daughter was one of the people lost.
The fatalities, unfortunately. And again, we're really sorry to hear that. But I think the thing that sticks out is the shirt has all the cities that have had mass shootings since then.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I get it that this isn't a political show, but it should scare you a little bit that that's enough cities to fill a jersey.
Yeah. So pick up a jersey, go to Napa Valley 1839, just look it up on Google, you'll find it.
Yeah, this is it, baby. Next week we got amazing shows. Ramses Sandoval's going to be on.
Exactly. From Univision Deportes.
Plus, we got the conference semifinals.
Exactly.
It's going to be dope.
It's going to be dope. Thank you for watching. So with that said, my name is Christian Polanco.
I'm Alexis Guerrero. Together, what are we?
The Cooligans!